The Smithsonian Institute touts itself as the largest museum, education, and research complex in the world. Its goal, as set out by founder John Smithson in 1846, is to be an establishment for the increase and diffusion of knowledge. Some 17 million people visit the Smithsonian museums every year to learn about science, art, and history. A history that is now under presidential scrutiny as Trump takes aim at the venerable institution in what he says is a return to sanity and pushback against divisive ideology. Welcome to the Politics of New America, exploring and explaining the policies of the American government in this era of radical change. On the show today, we're examining Trump's vision for American history through a recent executive order. I'm your host, Nathan Stone, and with me is our producer, Josh Carmody.
A return to sanity, you say?
That's what I said.
That was not what I was expecting to hear.
I just read the names of these things,
sure,
and
yeah.
It's Restoring Truth and Sanity to American history. And this was an executive order signed on March 27th, 2025. Now, this is one of those executive orders, I think, that fell off the radar pretty quick. There's been a lot going on, and you'd be forgiven for maybe overlooking this one. This is kind of a continuation of the Republican fascination with culture war. And so this executive order really speaks to their priorities, but there's a lot here kind of going on behind the scenes that I felt was worth talking about here. So, Josh, to start us off here, are you a museum guy?
I am a museum guy. I love museums. I think I've never been to any of the Smithsonian's, but I have been to the New York Natural History Museum in Manhattan, which was very big for me because of the movie We're Back, with the dinosaurs that are given cereal that makes them smart. So I was very excited to go to that museum, but it has the famous, squid and the whale display and amazing dinosaur exhibit and stuff. But yeah, I've always been a museum guy. We have some fantastic local ones here, where in the city we're recording in Halifax. Yeah,
It's the kind of thing for me where I was always the kid who loved museums, but rushed through 80% of it to get to the dinosaur exhibit. And then
also me, yeah.
Yeah, just hung out with dinosaurs as much as I could. And I have been fortunate enough to visit the Smithsonian back several years ago. My wife and I did a trip down the Eastern Seaboard and finished off in Washington, D.C. I have to say it was the absolute highlight of the Washington leg of our trip. It's the kind of thing where everything is so much bigger. We went to several of the Smithsonian's. There's 17 in Washington, D.C., which is a tremendous boon to the kind of local population. If you need something free to do, the Smithsonian's are absolutely incredible. They're world class. And it's one of the reasons I chose this topic was because the Smithsonian really is, I think, for a lot of Americans and visitors to America, it's a bit of a cherished institution. It's something that is really important culturally, and it's very well regarded around the world. So anything that changes the way that the Smithsonian operates is kind of a big deal. The Smithsonian, it's not just museums. People think of the museums. There's 21 museums plus a zoo. However,
that I didn't know.
Yeah.
In kind of prep for this episode, I was learning that there were more than one, because I always sort of associated it with being one museum in Washington, D.C. But as you said, yeah, there's 17. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Didn't know they had a zoo, though.
Yes, yeah, it's the National Zoo in Washington, D.C., and they also run 21 libraries. Now, just to give you some idea, the Smithsonian's, they have museums covering a wide variety of topics. The most popular ones by visitors are the Natural History Museum, of course, because you get people like me, overgrown children who still love dinosaurs and just want to see the dinosaurs. The Air and Space Museum, which was another one that my wife and I visited, that is absolutely astounding. You can see intercontinental ballistic missile in the main foyer. The Spirit of St. Louis hanging from
shuttles there? Like space shuttles?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, awesome, yeah.
It's absolutely wild. And one of the more recent ones that's also very popular, the African American History Museum. And currently there are 2 new museums in development. there is a Latino museum, or the American Latino Museum. So that'll be the history of Latin Americans, and the Women's History Museum. And both of these were authorized by Congress in 2020. Construction hasn't started, but they have started a bit of an online presence, at least for the Women's Museum. So that's kind of where the Smithsonian's at. It's funded largely by endowments. The federal government funds it to the tune of $1 billion. And if you've ever been to a Smithsonian, you will know that there is a gift shop on every floor. I don't know how much they make. I assume it's a good bit from the gift shop.
That's every museum. Yeah. I feel like everyone has the experience with the foam triceratops and the other toys that you don't see anywhere else except in the museum gift shop.
Now, this executive order is trying to change how the Smithsonian operates. And this was, as I said, signed on March 27th, 2025. It's entitled Restoring Truth and Sanity to American History. Its purpose is basically that it argues American history is under attack by, I quote, by a widespread effort to undermine traditional narratives around the nation's founding, as well as America's purported values. Now, the follow-up for this, of course, is what are American values, especially in 2025. Think your very traditional American values that the nation might have espoused in the 20th century.
The nuclear family.
The nuclear family, absolutely. There's all sorts of stuff, but when you think of these traditional values, mom, apple pie, it's all very almost jingoistic. But I'm gonna quote one of the paragraphs from this, just because I think it gives us the best understanding of what their issue is with the Smithsonian, and again, it all ties into this larger culture war that we've been seeing. Under this historical revision, our nation's unparalleled legacy of advancing liberty, individual rights, and human happiness is reconstructed as inherently racist, sexist, oppressive, or otherwise irredeemably flawed. Rather than fostering unity and a deeper understanding of our shared past, the widespread effort to rewrite history deepens societal divides and fosters a sense of national shame, disregarding the progress America has made and the ideals that continue to inspire millions around the globe. So this is the big complaint, is that there's not enough American pride in what is being displayed here. There's too much of the pointing out of the country's flaws or perceived flaws, and Trump in his administration would like to put an end to that. They want the Smithsonian Institute to be proudly American, beat its chest, wave the flag. And so they're going to try and do some things about this. Now, the executive order goes on to complain about organizations pursuing, non-traditional means of educating the public, or talking about racism, sexism, class, and privilege, which are topics that they just don't think are valid. Mm-hmm. Now, it takes aim specifically at the Smithsonian, which it claims has come under sway of a divisive, race-centered ideology that treats Western values as harmful and oppressive. So when we get a sense of this, it's very politically motivated, of course. This is an executive order that plays very well to President Trump's base. And this is the kind of thing that really kind of gets them out, motivates them, and kind of tells us a little bit of why this is an executive order and not just an email. Because nothing here absolutely needs to be an executive order, which we'll kind of come to see. So it continues in making its point. It uses the example of an installation at the Smithsonian American Art Museum. It's called The Shape of Power, Stories of Race and American Sculpture. So the executive order uses the following as an example of a problem with the exhibition, and I quote, "Societies, including the United States, have used race to establish and maintain systems of power, privilege, and disenfranchisement." So that is part of what this exhibition is saying, and the administration here does not agree or like that. I think it's pretty hard to argue necessarily that the United States has used race to establish and maintain systems of power, privilege, and disenfranchisement, considering its early history of slavery, the fact that, until the civil rights movement, you had an entire race of people who were worth less in the Constitution than white people. So again, though, it doesn't really, the history of it doesn't really matter. It's more about they don't want the Smithsonian talking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this was something even was pursued a little bit in the first Trump administration, where, because you pointed out that this is kind of the continuation of their culture war, that something you would see frequently mentioned during the first administration was, oh, I don't want my children being taught about slavery, the American slave trade in school, because that makes them feel bad for being white, was a kind of common rhetoric during the first Trump administration. Mm-hmm. And now they've gone, they've leaped far over that to now it's guess what? No one's allowed to hear about any of this ever again.
Yeah, it is an escalation, certainly. It also, I think, says a lot about where we are in 2025, that this is being done very, very openly. Because what this executive order is trying to do at its core is proclaim that the administration is going to be taking over the board of the Smithsonian mm-hmm. through their influence on it. So in a second, we'll get into kind of how the board is structured, because as part of its charter, the vice president sits on the board. There's Congress people that sit on the board of the Smithsonian, as well as civilians. And it's much like an election. It's very much a numbers game for them. And what they'll be trying to do is get like-minded individuals on this board so that they can start making these sweeping changes. Because the president, though he can make an executive order about the Smithsonian, has no actual authority mm-hmm. over the Smithsonian. So what this executive order turns out to be is a marching order more than anything else. It's saying, here's what we're going to do to fix this problem that we've seen. And because of that, does it need to be an executive order? No. But will it play very well to the base if you make it into a nice, flashy executive order? It certainly will, yeah.
The king hath decreed. And I mean, yeah, you had said off the top, this might be one that kind of fell between the cracks for a lot of people. And I mm-hmm. think it's worth reiterating that with this show, we kind of want to break through that style of bombardment that the Trump administration does to kind of to highlight things that people should be looking at. And this one is one, because you can already look at how they're treating history that they do have control over mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
In the government, where they are removing Medal of Honor recipients of color from history pages, government history pages, mm-hmm. women that have contributed to history. So things that they already do have control over, they're already pulling back, getting rid of, taking away. So we can already kind of see what they would do given more control, or if people they put in power will at the Smithsonian will follow the order.
Absolutely. This is very much a continuation of what we're seeing going on, especially with the Pentagon in the last couple of weeks has been coming under a lot of fire for removing references on websites, historical, plaques, that kind of thing, talking about people of color who have made, historic achievements within the ranks of the military. I believe just recently they removed information about the Tuskegee Airmen.
Yes. Yeah.
This is almost seminal American military history that has been removed because of this DEI purge, which is honestly to call service members DEI is I believe just a wild leap, but it does show you the lengths at which the administration is willing to go to push its narrative and its version of American history, which welcomes far fewer viewpoints. I think one of the great things that has happened with the way that we look at history over the past, even in our lifetimes, right, 30, 40 years, is that we have started taking in more perspectives, more viewpoints, and that's just not something that they're interested in doing. They have an idea of what they want American history to look like, and they are aggressively pursuing it at this point. So one of the issues that comes to the fore when you keep reading this EO is that they want to make federal sites places where America is celebrated. It's not a place to ask questions about your country. It's a place to, look up at the flapping flag and, as a tear, a single tear,
a solitary
tear of pride rolls down,
and it changes color as it falls down your cheek from red, white, and blue. No, it's not. But don't question why that happened to you. It's fine.
So, another quote here is, Americans of our extraordinary, they want to remind Americans of our extraordinary heritage, consistent progress towards becoming a more perfect union, and unmatched record of advancing liberty, prosperity, and human flourishing. Again, it's a very romanticized version of American history where everything's been ironed out, right? We don't need to see any of the unfortunate collateral damage of this more perfect union.
Yeah, the Pilgrims and the indigenous people had created Thanksgiving because they solved all their problems.
Yeah. So that's kind of the policy and the purpose behind this bill. So that's Section 1. Section 2 is called Saving Our Smithsonian. And here's where we get into the mechanics of what they want to do. So this is a direct order for Vice President Vance. He'll work to implement the executive order through his position as a board member on the Smithsonian Board of Regents. The Board of Regents sits above the secretary, who is kind of the day-to-day CEO, the one who runs it. The board sits above him and is ultimately responsible for the direction of the institute. And so they will seek to remove improper ideology, as they call it, from the museums. And they're also going to work with the Republican-controlled Congress to make sure that future funding for the Smithsonian museums will not go towards any exhibit that counters American values. Again, your mileage on American values may differ, or acknowledge the accomplishments of trans women athletes. That was very specific. I didn't add that in as an example. Like, that is in there. Mm-hmm. So that second place under American values, is making sure that trans women
gotta single out the 0 point whatever percentage of the population.
So finally, they're looking to work with Congress to appoint citizen members to the Smithsonian Board of Regents committed to advancing that policy. So we've talked kind of around how the Smithsonian is governed to this point, but this is where it gets important. So it operates independently of the federal government as a public-private partnership. And its current secretary is a man by the name of Lonnie G. Bunch III. He's been there since 2019. He's also the first African-American to head the institute. He's a historian. He was, I believe he was the head when the African-American Museum opened as well. So the institute itself is overseen by a 17-member board of regents, drawn from government, private citizens, and academia. 6 of those members come from Congress. 3 senators and 3 from the House of Representatives. 9 of the members are private citizens, nominated by the board and appointed to 6-year terms. And then the vice president and the chief justice, who is currently John G. Roberts Jr., sit on the board. Now, the chief justice, Roberts, has actually served on the board since 2005. And he's described as a moderate conservative judge who is a bit of an institutionalist. So not hard R Republican, but right-leaning, but been there for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where things get interesting because, again, the president, Vance, can't, he's one guy on the board. He can't actually control the board itself, right? The board, they all do their own thing. However, these 6-year terms for the civilians, 6 of the civilian members' terms will expire by 2027, which is well within the lifespan of the current government. And there are currently 4 Republicans on the board, including J.D. Vance. Citizens can serve up to 2 terms, but they can't serve more than that. So what the Republicans have to do here basically is a lot like when there is an election, right? When you're trying to get past a certain threshold. Because a lot of what the board does is governed by majority.
Mm-hmm.
So each time one of these civilian members' terms comes up, likely the administration will seek out to find someone suitable to these values that they've espoused, to bring in and become a board member. And so eventually what happens is that the board ends up being almost subsumed into the apparatus of what the government is trying to do here. And so everyone marches to the same drum.
And do they have to have, like, there's the whole campaign and election? Like, who votes in this?
So they're not really any kind of election or kind of... It's all... they're nominated by the board itself and then appointed to 6-year terms. So what that means is basically each of the board members, they can get together with the others and they can kind of put up their preferred candidate. Then the board, as that 17-member group, would choose. So it's interesting because depending on the makeup of the current board, and we know that there's 4 Republicans, including Vance, on the board, that are going to be at least a block. We maybe have the Chief Justice, if he's in on this. We don't know, of course. And so what they have to do is maybe overcome the other members of the board if they are more traditional to, hey, we're going to keep doing what we're doing here. So what you could see actually is almost a battle for the
Smithsonian.
Yes.
Like,
I didn't want to go to the movie. I was trying my hardest. I knew you were going to take it there.
I've been trying to figure out how to weasel this joke in. Thank God you put it out there for me, and I picked it right up.
Didn't mean to do that layup, but it was a layup.
Producer Hannah here. Currently, the space is not in use. If you would like to hear your ad here at the beginning or at the end of the show, you can contact us at hauntedmouseproductions@gmail.com. Back to the show.
Yeah, the Battle of the Smithsonian, we could see that. It would be a very quiet one, likely, in the background without too many people paying attention. But it's important because the Smithsonian, it's the largest museum institution on the planet. It's huge, right? There's nothing quite like this. And it's also free for Americans. And their resources are free. And now not everyone's in Washington, D.C. or can get to D.C. to see a lot of these museums. But their online resources are used in classrooms, right? This is something that has a lot of trickle down. And so if the Smithsonian starts removing parts of American history, that becomes a problem for everyone, or it should be a problem for everyone. And it changes the narrative for Americans and removes some very, very important parts of history that should not be forgotten.
And especially, like you said, at the school level.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just some old nerds that are interested in history that want to go to the museum. This is affecting teachers who are using these resources to instruct kids about what has happened and how things should go forward.
Absolutely.
And they're fundamentally changing that by doing this.
And I can tell you just from as a personal anecdote, the day my wife and I went to the Smithsonian Natural History Museum, there was about 40 school buses in front of that. And we honestly thought, oh no, should we go in there? But luckily it's so vast and cavernous that we weren't absolutely swimming through a sea of children, although they were everywhere. But yeah, this is important for kids. So back to the board here. The board, that 17-member board, elects a 3-person executive committee to represent the power of the board when it is not in session. 2 of those 3 members must be civilians. So that's really important as well, because we can't just have Vance and Roberts make up 2/3 of that board, right? And maybe another congressional Republican. The majority of that executive committee is always going to be civilians. So it's even more important for them, if they want to push these changes through, to get those civilian nominees appointed to the board and then get them on this executive committee, because the board itself isn't going to meet that often. Of course, it's a lot of people, some very important people and also very busy politicians. They're just not going to do it. The executive committee is going to have a lot of power. And there's also an advancement committee, which is 3 or more members, it can vary, that assist the board in overseeing institutional philosophy and policy. Again, an important committee if you're looking to change the philosophy of the institution. And so that's kind of the second section is laying out how this is going to go down. And basically what it comes down to is stacking a board of directors. And then filtering out policy from there. That does, however, mean that it's not a guaranteed win for them. This is something that could come down to maybe a very public fight. And we don't know really how the secretary feels. He's not on the board, but he is kind of the face of the Smithsonian, Mr. Bunch. If, he's had a quite a successful run as a secretary so far, especially in opening what I believe is the 3rd most popular museum, the African American Museum. And what influence does he have with the board? And so, if he sees this is a person of color who may be may have very strong opinions on removing some of that history. And so we don't know how that's going to work out for them. Now, Section 3 is a bit of a letdown. We've been riding high. Sections 1 and 2, a lot of important stuff going on. Section 3, they're restoring Independence Hall in the Independence National Historic Park for the 250th anniversary celebrations. Great.
Cool. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. If there's anything good that could possibly come out of the Trump administration, is that they might hype a whole bunch of shit around the 250 coming up here.
So I mentioned that this could be a very big collision course. And one of the points that I'll make to support that is I went through the Smithsonian Institute's future planning. Now they have a strategic plan that looks ahead to 2027. And it describes part of their role, which it's, is ever expanding, ever being reinterpreted, right? And a lot of institutions do this, a lot of educational institutions. So they describe part of that role as exploring racial or social justice through the aperture of history. And that they currently plan to explore the impacts of racial identification and racism in the United States and globally by providing historical context, innovative activations and different visions through art.
And stricken.
Yeah. So this is the absolute inverse of everything we've just mentioned that the Trump administration wants the Smithsonian to be doing. So what happens to these plans? Because, of course, this is the largest museum in the world. I think things probably don't move all that quickly. So there's probably some momentum behind this. They're already planning, I'm sure, ahead to 2026, 2027, right? What happens when and if the board suddenly decides to do a 180 on that policy? Are there exhibitions planned that get canceled? Are there whole wings that have to be redone, closed, reopened? What happens to artifacts that are no longer on display? There's a lot of very, what I would say is concerning consequences if you're looking down the road and thinking, if this happens, what in the world is the Smithsonian going to look like in 2 or 3 years? And certain museums, of course, may be more impacted than others. But we also have to remember there are 2 museums coming online.
Mm-hmm.
The American Latino Museum and the American Women's Museum. Again, both of those deal with peoples and subjects that this administration is not really
exactly
that
keen to learn about or teach people about. Yeah. And we've seen from with Doge and other kind of executive orders that come through what happens when you do just pull the plug on things, and the momentum, as we learn in physics, doesn't just stop instantaneously. There is a lot of spillover. There is a lot of problems that come from it. People lose their jobs. Things go missing. Mm-hmm. Money goes missing. There's a whole host of problems that come from this. I mean, especially where we're talking about exhibits. If these things have real artifacts in them, what's going to happen to those? Things are going to get lost in the shuffle when they start just stopping people from doing their jobs.
Mm-hmm. And what we've been talking about so far is on the museum side of things, which is only a part of what the Institute does. Mm-hmm. They do some very important research around science, of course, history research. They're huge. They are in a lot of different areas. They're a very important resource for academics. They're involved, as you say, conservation of artifacts, astrophysicists. They have conservation work. So this is an institute that is kind of everywhere in America. Mm-hmm. And when you throw it into uncertainty, the way that so many things are currently uncertain, it really makes you worry about the future of what this is, and also its international standing, how it's viewed by people around the world and other academic institutions around the world, and that kind of thing does matter. Even if you don't necessarily care what someone in the UK or elsewhere thinks about your museums, your Smithsonian, it does matter because these institutions share, right? They're constantly sharing data, they're sharing research, and if that is thrown into if there's questions around that, if the Smithsonian only exists as a propaganda piece now for this new, cleaner, better American history, does it hurt everyone?
Yeah, there's a bit of a disconnect for some people, and this goes for both sides of the aisle in America, that American exceptionalism is able to stand on its own, but historical research and scientific research and these institutions that are being thrown into uncertainty are collaborative efforts. And when you cannot when you cut yourself off from the rest of the world and try to function as an isolationist island, you lose out on so much context. And as you said, something just then becomes propaganda, and how does it function once you get there?
Yeah, it loses its value in a lot of ways when that happens, and it would be, I think, an absolute tragedy to see that happen. And we're not there, and we may not get there, but it is worth keeping an eye on if you care about the future of the way history and science are taught and displayed in the United States.
And museums are historically have not always been perfect institutions, and they I wouldn't say that all of them are now either. But part of learning and becoming better is about a willingness to move forward and accept change and change the way certain things have been done. But everything about this seems to be about going back to a time that exists possibly only in people's minds, and removing the ability to move forward and express what is great about everybody.
That's well said. Before we wrap up today, let's cover Section 4, which is a bit of a change of pace. So we've been all about the Smithsonian, but they did sneak in a little something extra for us here. They said let's have a little bit of dessert in this EO.
I was gonna say, I was like, oh man, we ate our meat. Now we're allowed to have what is it, the pudding?
Yeah. And this pudding is all about monuments and statues. So if we think back to the halcyon days of 2020, which is probably the first time anyone has called them that, we remember the Black Lives Matter movement, the fallout around the death of George Floyd, everything that came from that. There was a social upheaval, and during that, a lot of things were challenged. One of those things was the display of monuments and statues to primarily Confederate generals, Confederate war.
So strange to me.
Yeah,
I don't understand.
And also,
sorry, I should clarify. I don't understand why they were there. Yeah. I get why people wanted to take them down. Not totally clear why statues were put up for the secessionist government that formed within the United States.
Yeah, it's a puzzler. And also statues of very famous American slave owners.
Yes.
Now, a lot of those slave owners also happened to be the founding fathers, and that certainly is what it is. And so a lot of statues got taken down. They got removed, destroyed, taken away to protect them, and then never redisplayed. There was a lot of racial reckoning with, how America views its past and what people honestly deserve to be statues. So, yeah, people were asking the very good question you asked, which is, if there's a secessionist government that fails and leads to one of the bloodiest civil wars in history, why are we displaying so many of their leaders in various places? Because these, I want to say, kind of pro-Confederate sentiments, they never really went away, right? There was always the South will rise again thing that went on for like 100 and something odd years. Still waiting on that one. It's okay. Take your time, South. And
again, lionizing of some of the Confederate quote unquote heroes.
Robert E. Lee in particular gets a lot of love. The man didn't even want statues. He thought it was a terrible idea because he was on the thing of like, no, we need to like come together and heal and kind of forget this all happened.
Yeah.
And
I got a book tour coming up. I can't be dealing with this.
So, yeah, to get us back on track, we have hundreds and hundreds of statues removed all across the country. Now, Section 4 of the EO orders the Secretary of the Interior to determine whether any monuments or statues removed since 2020, so this is particularly targeting the ones from the Black Lives Matter movement and everything around that, should be redisplayed. And it claims that the removal of some monuments minimizes and disparages important American historical figures. Now, I went through a list of all of the monuments that were removed in response to this social movement. And I have to tell you, it's pretty much wall to wall Confederate war. Say Confederate war heroes. Put that in air quotes.
Yeah.
Confederate war heroes and slave owners, basically. There was one elk statue in Minnesota that was destroyed. Don't know what that elk was into, but you know what?
Sometimes people get excited. There's some collateral damage.
Yeah, it happens. Now, what they're also looking to do with this is, instead of changing, the monuments or reviewing, what should we. This section also deals with descriptions on monuments and statues. So we're going to redisplay some of the ones that we took down, but we're also going to change the descriptions on some of them. Those nice little plaques that come with your statues, to focus on the personal achievements and greatness of the American people or landscape. Just, if it's a landscape one. So this is, again, it seems like they're going to be removing anything that is acknowledging that, oh, hey, for example, George Washington, the ultimate founding father, right? Hero, we named everything after him, great stuff. Was a slave owner.
Yeah.
That part probably gets whited out, to maybe talk up his greatness a little bit more. And so that's the kind of thing that we're seeing in this. Now, yeah, it really should be stated that the overwhelming majority of statues removed in the aftermath of the riots were honoring members of the Confederacy, those responsible for the genocide of Indigenous Americans or slave owners. So it's a real trifecta.
I'm sure there was some Custer statues that went down pretty hard.
38 monuments to Christopher Columbus alone.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. Like Robert E. Lee had quite a few. Columbus, oh, boy. He was, they had them everywhere, I guess. Now, before, and people might be getting worried about this, especially if you were part of a movement that got a statue taken down at your state legislature or, in a park or something like that. The federal government, the Trump administration, can only examine statues and monuments removed at the federal level, which means only national parks and federal buildings and land. So for the vast majority of the things that were removed, the federal government actually has no jurisdiction to order them to be put back, because most of them were removed on a state level or a municipal level.
Yeah.
So it's not a full return to the glory of the Confederacy. It's just there. You might see some questionable things happening.
The South is sitting up. The South is at the edge of the bed, getting the slippers on.
So that is Section 4. And then we always finish with a nice little disclaimer there, but nothing of interest here. So,
and from what I've seen of the executive orders I've gone through, they tend to say the same thing, which is, you can't sue us for any problems that come from this executive order. There's very similar wording. Sometimes
they all have a
word for
boilerplate.
word.
Yeah, they do. And most of it is around what the executive powers cover and what they do not cover. And this is always worth keeping in mind when you're thinking about executive orders. The president has no ability to make law. The president only has the ability to say how a law will be pursued. So the president's power of executive, he can say, I want us, in ensuring we follow this law, I want us to do these things.
Yeah.
But the president can't make up new things. And that is where a lot of litigation around executive orders comes in. And the American government is very litigious in the way that it challenges things. So lawsuits are much more prevalent in terms of people and interest groups and government sue around legislation, laws, executive orders, judicial rulings. It's just the way that the system has evolved. It's very adversarial. So a lot of these disclaimers kind of focus on that kind of thing. They try and say like, oh, no, we're not making any laws. We wouldn't do that. We won't do that. We would never do that. And so that's where you get that. So, Josh,
just aggressive suggestions.
Yeah, we're about ready to wrap this one up. This is a really interesting cultural executive order, which is why I wanted to cover it. Kind of looking at the broader picture, just to wrap things up, this is a very easy PR win for the president with his base here. This is all things that your hardcore MAGA conservative is going to see and is going to feel good about. This
is the only acceptable vaccine, the one against the woke mind virus.
It'll get you, that woke mind virus. When I read this, I say, when I read any EO, I look at it and I say, is this presidential overreach? Is this something that is going to go to the courts and the courts are going to look at it and say, yeah, he can't do this? I don't think it is. I think this is all within the realm of the executive. I do think it could have been an email, but I think it's important that it wasn't. And what I'll just say is that it's happening. What conservatives would have done, I think, in earlier administrations, if they had a bone to pick with the Smithsonian, they would have done the same thing. But you didn't heard about it, right? It would have been a little bit more clandestine. It would have been a little bit more like, well, we don't know how people are going to react. So, we're
gonna get
no
up
one
and do it
cares
at 3
about the
a.m.
Board of Regents, right, at
Yeah.
the Smithsonian. So we're gonna sneak in there and we're gonna change it, and we'll change it over many years, and eventually we'll bring them onto our way of thinking through dominating the board. The fact that it is a proclamation of what they intend to do just kind of shows you, I think, how American conservatism has shifted in this era of absolute dominance that they're in. So what are our consequences? Well, we've kind of hit on them. It can really reduce the standing and trust of the Smithsonian globally. Could also lead to brain drain from their academic centers. Again, they do so much research. If that research gets curtailed, if there's things they can't release, you could see scientists who are always in demand, pack up their bags, go to the private sector, go overseas, what have you. We might see the Battle of the Smithsonian. Could happen.
Where's Robin Williams? Get him on the phone.
Yeah. And it may throw into question the future of the two upcoming museums, the Latino and Women's Museums, and possibly the suppression or redaction of African-American history within the African-American Museum. We don't know how that museum looks after a Trumpian makeover.
I assume it's a commissioned portrait of a white John Henry just building those railroads.
Oh, God, I really hope not.
Oh, yeah, same. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this one. As always, we hope that we've provided you with a little insight and clarity around the policies and actions of the American government. On behalf of myself and Josh, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on The Politics of New America.
I hate to admit it, but I think I'm going to go watch National Treasure now.
This has been a Haunted Mouse production. Cut that out.